I am endeavoring this season to be out there talking to BYU's top-rated recruits. Now, BYU recruits nationally. There's a lot of guys across the country that are playing high school football all around this great country, but a lot of them at the same time are right here in my backyard in Utah. I was out at the Orem Lone Peak game. Now, I did not get a chance to catch up with Kawe Akana, but I did catch up with two guys that BYU has committed in this upcoming recruiting cycle. One was Bott Mulitalo. The other was Junie Moala, Lopeti Moala. Some of you may know him, but it goes by Junie. We're going to let you hear from Junie tomorrow on the podcast. In the interest of time, we're going to talk with Bott Mulitalo on today's show. Now, some of you may recall he was a standout defensive lineman for Lone Peak a year ago, was actually, in fact, I thought the best defensive player across the board. Well, he made an incredible decision this offseason to move over to playing offensive line and playing offensive tackle, in fact, for the Lone Peak Knights. It was my first opportunity Friday to see him actually in action playing offensive line. And I'll just say this, to my untrained eye, and trust me, I know some things about offensive line play, but I don't know it nearly as well as other people do. But from what I could see, it looks like he's been playing the position his entire life. He looks incredibly comfortable. He looks very fluid. And the best part was he was dominant at points. And I talked about Junie Moala, who's also a guy BYU has committed. Well, they lined up head-to-head multiple times in this game. And I'm not going to lie, it was an absolute chess match watching these two go head-to-head. It was fun to take in. And I had a chance to catch up with Bott after Lone Peak beat Orem in that game to talk about BYU, talk about his play in the game, and why he is so excited to play offensive line for the BYU Cougars. Here you go.
Do you feel like your transition to offensive line is complete yet?
I wouldn't say complete, but I would say I'm definitely improving every week. But it's definitely a hassle. It's definitely more detailed than D-line.
What's been the biggest thing you've worked on the most at offensive line?
Definitely the run game. I feel like that's where you get paid the most is in run game.
Yeah.
And then just working my pass game and, getting tips from Coach Woods and all them.
What's the feedback from Coach Woods about your play and when you talk to him?
He says I have really good base, I have really good bend, but he just said I should use my hands more and be more aggressive.
Okay, so I heard an interview with KSL last week where you're like, hey, BYU's my place. Why are you so dead set on BYU?
I've been a Utah fan growing up,
yeah.
But I feel like ever since my high school career started, BYU was a place for me, and I felt the spirit there.
What about BYU set it apart in your opinion?
Sorry, what was that?
What was it about BYU that set it apart in your opinion?
Definitely Coach Woods and the culture there, what Kalani's building, and I want to be a part of it.
You moved to offensive line. Do you hope that you said you want to get paid, like the run games where you get paid? Was it because you see guys like Penei Sewell doing what they're doing in the like?
Yes, sir. Just seeing what he did at Oregon, I want to do the same as him or be better.
Okay. What about this team do you think is going to set it apart this year, speaking of Lone Peak?
Sorry. Okay.
What's going to set this Lone Peak team apart in your opinion?
We got some new guys, but I feel like we've bonded together really well. So I feel like, with the Pulitans added to us, I feel like we'll dominate the whole state.
What's it like playing with the Pulos?
It's pretty easy. When I see that ball go up and I see the Pulitans going, I already know that's a touchdown. So.
Well, that one play that Jaron had, he makes the one move, he's off to the races. Is that fun to watch him do what he's doing?
Yes, sir. Oh, no, he does that every day at practice, so okay. I wasn't surprised when he did that.
Okay. What do you hope to accomplish the rest of this season just in terms of your overall play?
Just get better in my pass game as an offensive line, and then also being a team leader. Just leading my team out, I feel like that's one thing I need to work on.
You're still playing some defense. You still enjoy being able to get on the other side of the ball a little bit?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. It's definitely fun on defense.
Does it feel like old times when you switch over, though?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It feels like when I was a D-lineman.
Okay. Last thing for me is, when it comes to BYU, what's the relationship with the coaches like and just the players you know down there?
I have a cousin Keanu there. Mm-hmm. When I was first D-lineman, Coach Paul recruited me.
So Tanavasa is your Keanu?
Yeah, Keanu. He's my first cousin. So, me and him have a really good bond. And then I know some of the other boys on the team, but, just switching to O-line with Coach Woods, I felt like I've built a really good relationship with him and, Trevor Payne, all of them, and the rest of the O-line.
What has Keanu told you about BYU? Because he obviously made his own transition from Utah to BYU.
So was that?
What has Keanu told you about BYU, just in terms of his own transition?
He just told me it was the place for him, and I feel and he went there for the culture, not for the money. Because he was getting offered big bucks from other schools, but BYU, that's just a special place for me and him.
A big thank you once again to Bott Mulitalo for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. To tease ahead to tomorrow, you'll hear my exclusive conversation with Lopeti, a.k.a. Junie Mawala. Had a great chat with him in the aftermath of a tough loss, but he was gracious enough to take some time, and we'll get to that on our Tuesday edition of the podcast. Quick couple of other notes before we go on today's show. If you did not watch it late Friday night, you missed out on an incredible performance by the top-rated prospect in BYU's recruiting class, and that would be Ryder Lyons. I watched that game. They were taking on Grant Union High School in Sacramento, and Ryder was absolutely dominant. 31 of 37 passing, 408 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and oh, by the way, ran in another. There's another sequence in the game. I think it was like on a 2-point conversion. He gets bodied up by some defenders, and I could just see him talking trash the entire time. This kid, he has got moxie. He's got the it factor. He has got swagger. He has got everything you want in a 5-star quarterback. I am uber excited to see Ryder Lyons playing for the BYU football program. And if you saw some of the throws he made in that game, it shows you why everybody in college football was excited to have an opportunity to land this kid. The Oregons, the USCs, and BYU, they were fortunate enough to scoop him up, and he picked the BYU Cougars over literally any other program he could have wanted to play for. We also saw another guy BYU is recruiting in the 2027 class who happens to be Ryder's backup. That's Brody Rudnicki. And he came in the fourth quarter of that game, and I thought he acquitted himself quite well at the helm of this offense. Those stats, 31 of 37, 408 yards passing, and 5 total touchdowns. Yeah, it was like 3 quarters worth of action for Ryder. Dominant stuff. And the Grant team they took on is supposed to be one of the better teams in Northern California, excuse me. Really impressive stuff from Ryder Lyons. Congratulations to him. Also, Brock Harris, despite a tough loss for his team at Pineview, he only went out and put 12 catches on the board, 147 yards and 2 touchdowns. So incredible stuff from one of the other top-rated prospects in BYU's recruiting class. And the other notes before we go on today's show, it's a tough break, quite literally, for Jacob Robinson. Many of you know that I'm a diehard 49ers fan. I was so looking forward to seeing Jacob Robinson make the team as an undrafted free agent. It looked like he was going to make the 53-man roster. And in the final regular season game, he breaks his forearm. Brutal. I cannot imagine how tough that is to absorb for him, and I'm wishing him the absolute best as he moves forward here. I hope he lands with the practice squad for the 49ers, and when he heals from that forearm fracture, barring something crazy happening, I hope he lands back on the active roster at some point this season. I'm telling you, Robinson, we all saw it at BYU, was a guy who, I know he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he played a lot bigger than his frame and height suggested. And to break your arm in the final preseason game, that's awful. And I wish him the best, and I hope that he bounces back very, very quickly. And then the final note I got for you guys today is the only sport that's currently actually in its regular season is BYU women's soccer. And if you did not see it also late Saturday night, you missed the BYU Cougars, ranked 19th in the country, upset number 4 UCLA at South Field. Ellie Walbrook, who at one point transferred from UCLA to BYU, she had a brace in a 2-2 draw earlier on in the week at Cal Poly. That was Tuesday. So she already had 2 goals in the bag. Well, she adds the only goal in BYU's upset of UCLA, and you got to think that feels pretty good for her, being a former Bruin, scoring against her former team, and obviously leading her team to a 1-0 shutout victory. So congratulations to the BYU women's soccer program. It's incredible stuff for them, and they are back at it coming up later this week, Friday night, in fact. They host the Auburn Tigers at Southfield at 7 o'clock Mountain Time. It'll be streaming on ESPN Plus. Greg Wrubell and Carlos Swenson Haslam will be on the call of that one. But if you're not paying attention to BYU women's soccer, I would encourage you to tune in because they're absolutely killing it right now. All right, that is going to do it for today's edition of the show. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. For your second listen, make you check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith's latest rumors, portal entries, and signings across college football. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape with the Portal Podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as I often say, thank you for being an everydayer right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.